So now our ball creation is really simple. All I do is say, this is the ball. We could make this more specific, but I want to get things working before I start changing stuff. So we want to get all our functions in place. This is different than how I did in lecture, but it doesn't really matter. It's just two different ways of approaching the same topic. So now I'm going to add a new function called move. And it's going to take self, because every function always takes self in an object when I'm writing a class. And really, it's just this line here. Do that, except instead of ball rect run, we're going to use self.rect. So I'm going to copy self.rect, v self.speed. And I'm going to do one more thing, is I'm actually going to copy this line of code so that I can make the collisions a little nicer to look off of. I'm going to tab that, make sure everything's lined up. So I'm going to reset the speed based on my X and Y. That way I can do all my collisions in terms of X and Y instead of indexes. So I save this and come over to ball demo, execute. We should now get a line error on line 29 again. Yep, line 29, exactly where we expect to, because that is dealing with this section of code, which is our wall collision. So I'm going to cut that. I'm going to do ball1.move. Ball2.move. Again, now our line error message should be on line 32. Yep, it's exactly where we expect it. Great. So let's go back to our ball. And let's add a new function called def wall collide. Now, every function name should be a verb. It should be doing something, whereas every attribute or variable like image, rect, or speed should be a noun. It's really important to keep those straight because it makes it easier when you're programming to debug what things are doing what. So while collide is a verb, and it's going to say it's colliding wall. So I'm going to paste that in there. We're going to tab all that so it actually looks right. And let's rewrite this a little better. So first thing is we're going to paste in self.rect. So I'm going to hit control copy, control, I'm going to highlight this, control H. Oh, highlight that, control H. And I'm going to replace that with this. Replace and find, replace and find, replace and find, replace and find. Now, the next thing I want to replace is I want to replace every instance of speed index 1, speed 1 index 1, with self.speed x, or sorry, y. Replace and find, replace and find, replace and find, replace and find. And then speed 1 index 0 is going to be self.speed x. Find, replace and find, replace and find, find, replace and find, find. Okay. So now all our wall collides are in terms of the self.rect and self.speed x or speed y, and then we rebuild the speed every time we move. This is a little nicer because this code is a little more readable now. The only thing I left is speed size 1 and size 0. If I wanted to really fancy, I would do width is equal to size index 0 and height is equal to size index 1. And now I can replace this with height and this with width. Now, put that in our code. We're going to do ball1 dot collide. Sorry, wall collide size. Duplicate that, so I can then also do ball2. Our error message. Now I can get rid of this code. Our first error message should now be on line 35. Oop, I made an error message somewhere in ball line 21 of balls. So let's take a look at that. GIGHT. Oh, silly typos get you every time. And that's why I'm testing the code every step of the way. It's really important to make sure things are behaving themselves before I do things. Ball rect's not defined. That's on line 35. Exactly where we're expected to. Perfect. So the last thing we need to take and transfer over into a function is collision between balls. I'm going to take and carve that out and make a new function. Def ball collide. Self other. Paste. And now I need to tab this whole thing in nicely. And we need to also steal the distance function. So let's go grab that from ourselves too. So this is no longer hanging out here. We're going to carve that out, go to our ball code, and we're going to add a new function. And this is a noun. So let's make it a noun. We're going to make this a verb. So it's going to be get dist. And instead of 0.1, it's 2.2. It's going to be self, comma, other. And we're always going to use this with another ball. So x1 and x2. So x1 in this case is going to be self.rect.center x. And I got that from looking at the Pygame documentation. That's one of the attributes a rectangle has, or one of the variables it has. And this is going to be y. And I can get rid of this chunk of code. That's nice and pretty. And then we're going to do the same thing, except copy that, paste it in, and make this other.rect.center x. And copy, replace this one with center y. And the actual math is exactly the same. I can leave that. Now, I'm going to Control H and replace that with self.rect. Replace and find. And this gets changed. Instead of being distance center, it's just going to be to the second one, and it's just going to be it's going to be just other. So now Control H and change this to other. Replace and find. And this is going to be self.rad. And it's going to be other.rad. And I don't want my objects to reach inside each other, so we're going to get rid of that line of code. And we're going to go and fix this also. I'm going to steal the X portion here, copy, paste, and the Y portion from here. Control Z, Control C, copy, paste. It's a lot more readable. Now to put this in our code, all we have to do is we have to tell each ball to hit each other because each one's responsible for their own collision. So ball 1 dot ball collide ball 2. And this one's going to be ball 2 dot collide ball 1. And finally, we have to do the blitz. So ball 1 dot image, ball 1 dot rect, ball 2 dot image, ball 2 dot rect. Now we can clear some of this dead space to make it a little more concise. And Gnome sits on one screen now, and it's a lot more readable. Let's execute this. We should now get 2 balls running. Oh, we have an error on line 40 of ball.py. So let's take a look. Oh, I need to tab all this code in Y1. Highlight tab, save, Control S, execute. And we now have an error in dist. When I call a local function, it's going to be get, instead of dist, it's going to be self.getDist. And now they're starting on top of each other. So our next step is to clean up the initialization function to make sure that we get all that code cleaned up so it actually can start in different spots with different images.